Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Money Talk. I'm Johnny.
And hello, I am Theresa, and today we have Miss Amanda with us. She is in Australia and she is a financial expert and she knows so much about financial abuse. And so we would like to welcome her to our show today. How are you, Amanda?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, now can you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. My name is Amanda Cassar. I live on the beautiful Gold Coast on the east of Australia. I've been a financial advisor since about the year 2000. I'm married with 2 kids and my second grandbaby on the way, and been in financial services for 30 years. So it's a long time.
Wonderful.
Wow.
Congratulations. And then I have to share one secret about you. Are you also an author?
I am. I wrote my first book, Financial Secrets Revealed, a few years ago to share people's money stories and the lessons they've learned along the way.
Wonderful. And so where can the audience find your book?
I am on Amazon, Booktopia, Barnes & Noble, all the usual suspects.
Wonderful,
all right.
wonderful. Okay, all right. Well, let's jump in, honey.
All right. Well, one of the things I think that was kind of intriguing to me was financial abuse because I really never heard of it before. And I said, well, I want to kind of understand what that is. So, what is financial abuse, Amanda? What is that?
Yeah, financial and economic abuse is where usually an intimate partner, friend, or carer has control over assets or financial documents and uses them to your detriment, basically. So this could be anything from a family member forcing an elderly relative to change a will. It could be not passing on grocery money to your partner to provide for the family or not enough. In some extreme cases, we have what we call period poverty, where a partner won't allow their partner to buy sanitary items at that time of the month. So it's a very extreme and controlling practice where money is the tool used to control the other person.
So you have witnessed this.
Yes, unfortunately.
Well, can you give us an example of something that you have seen where someone has experienced financial abuse?
Yeah, so my interest first started when I wrote my book, Financial Secrets Revealed, and one of the ladies I interviewed shared her story with me. So she had been an award-winning investigative journalist. She entered into a marriage with property and money in the bank. When she left that marriage, she was broken in spirit. She had a stroke and developed epilepsy. She had no assets left in her name. Her partner, in the guise of love, had suggested that she transfer the assets to him for protection in case she ever got sued. And she had a daughter to him. And by the time she left, she'd had to steal from the grocery money to buy grocery cards that she could leave at a friend's house so that when she could finally leave, she'd have some money to pay for food while she slept on her friend's couch and got her life back together again.
Oh my gosh. And so, like, in cases like that, how do you recommend somebody come back from that? How do they handle it?
Well, I'll have you know now she's married to a beautiful man and living in California and having the time of her life. So she has come out the other side.
Wonderful. She survived.
So,
Nice.
so for that, there is light at the end of the tunnel for those going through this. I think for most countries, financial abuse falls under domestic violence because it is the easiest way to control your partner. To deprive them of financial assets usually makes them very dependent on the perpetrator of the abuse. And I'm going to be gross generalizing here, but for the most part, it's women who are discriminated against with abuse because they're the caretakers of the children or their elderly parents.
Mhm.
And the husband is traditionally the breadwinner. That's not to say that it doesn't happen the other way around, because it absolutely does. But for the most part, it is perpetrated against women. And also minority groups and very patriarchal societies are also very prone to this form of violence.
Wow. And so, can you give the audience like some symptoms or signs to be able to recognize if they're being taken advantage of financially?
Yeah, sure. So it can be as simple as your partner starts by not allowing you to progress. You'd like to do some studies and move on in your career. The case I mentioned earlier, the media journalist, she was told, you've got to stop fiddling around with the media and just get a job packing shelves at the local supermarket. And it wasn't until her daughter turned to her and said, Mummy, that's not who you are, that she realized she needed to go. So things that make you really uncomfortable don't allow for advancement. You might be forced to work in a family business for very limited or no wages at all. In the old days, it used to be handing over every single receipt. What did you spend? I'm checking every single thing that you purchased. These days with online banking and apps, that becomes a lot easier to monitor. It can be forging signatures on fraudulent insurance claims. It can be changing wills and powers of attorney. Elder financial abuse against those with dementia is a lot easier to perpetrate. When paperwork goes missing, they may not realise. So there's lots of signs and symptoms. And over here in Australia, there was a woman eventually murdered, and for her family, they saw things like he would take the credit card out of her hands. She hadn't had a new pair of shoes in many, many years. She wanted to go back and work in real estate when the children went to school, and he forbade her from doing that. So they launched a campaign after her murder with the hashtag Say Something, because all they felt, it's not our place, it's their marriage, it's how they do things. We might not like that. We might not do that in our marriage, but, that's how they do it. And we kind of justify to ourselves, oh, that's a bit strange, but, it's their business. And sadly, it resulted in her death from physical violence after the financial abuse.
Wow, that's extreme financial abuse to death. Again, I'm kind of amazed because I never really considered the things that you said to be like financial abuse, and you don't think of it that way. But after you kind of explain it, yeah, you can actually look at it as financial abuse.
And then like it being a family friend, we could just look things over because you're like, well, okay, well, we don't do it that way, but they do it. So if that's the way they do it, it's okay.
Yes.
And so people missed those warning signs in her life. And so she ended up losing her life.
Yeah. So how that story played out, it was very big in the news in Queensland in Australia when he murdered her and joined in the search and was devastated about the loss of his wife. They had 3 little girls at the time. And it was a friend of the journalist who was covering the story. And she wrote to her girlfriend and said, "This is your story. You need to get out now." Every single thing that came out about his form of control over her, and I get goosebumps every time I say that. But the friend was brave enough to say, "I can see every single symptom that this man has perpetrated in what your husband is doing to you, and I want you to run." So sometimes, that can be the end of a friendship. You can point things out that someone doesn't want to hear, but it's also incredibly brave to be able to say, "I love you enough to tell you something isn't right." And often we know in ourselves, look, that's a bit weird. I don't know why he does that. I wish he wouldn't. I wish there was a bit more money to go a bit further for the kids. How come he can buy a Ferrari and I can't have a pair of shoes? So there's all those things we're telling ourselves, but we like to sort of rationalize because we don't want to think that someone we love is hurting us or controlling us.
Right.
So often it's not admitted to ourselves, but our friends might say, "Look, you don't come out and have cocktail night with us anymore," or "We used to go shoe shopping together and you don't do that anymore." So I think if we talk about our feelings, like I feel really sad that you're not allowed out with us anymore, because isolation and removing someone from their friends is also a symptom in these domestic violence cases, because it makes them so isolated and dependent on the perpetrator. It's difficult then for others to come back into their lives to rescue them when things get very difficult. So if you see friends even withdrawing or being kept away, or your partner says dreadful things about your friends all the time and belittles them, that can also be another sign that they are trying to isolate you from your community and support group so that you have to depend on them even further. So talking about these, I feel sad when I see you not allowed to go shopping, being spoken to this way, wearing shabby clothes when you didn't like to do that. So I feel because. So I feel really sad that your partner won't let you come out with us anymore because we used to have such a great time. So we're not going, "Your partner's an ass and I hate how he treats you." It's very easy to point the finger and get cranky, because we are. But if we're talking about our feelings, it makes it harder for them to go, "Don't talk to me like that." So, yeah, if you really want to help, it's an easier way to be able to raise the subject in a
Wow.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I hope that I never come across it, but if I do, at least I know like some of the signs and some of the symptoms that I would need to look for to see if that partner or friend or family member
It falls in this criteria
of being financially abused. And elderly abuse, that's growing pretty high too, even in the United States.
Yeah, it's a very, very high thing. And we are facing the barrel of the biggest intergenerational wealth transfer probably in the history of the world, where, there's people in their 50s now are coming into wealth from their elderly parents who are now in their 70s, 80s, 90s. And it's more money than most of us have seen. So there's a saying now of inheritance impatience. They're going, well, it's going to be mine anyway. I might as well help myself to some of it. So while the parents are still alive and need that money to support them in their frailty years, the children are coming in going, well, I've got school fees, I've got a mortgage, I've got debt, I'm in financial trouble, I want a bit of that.
And so the parents are giving this money to these adult children, right? Which is causing them to have problems later in their retirement if they run out of money.
Right.
And it can also be that it's one sibling in the family who does it and gets an unequal share because they've been forcing the parents to fund them for so long that then there's a non-equalization of the assets when they say we want to leave it evenly to all our family if the stay-at-home son or the dreadful daughter with substance abuse problems or whatever the situation is has taken a big chunk of that inheritance.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is like an eye-opener.
Yeah, that's a very eye-opener there, financial abuse. Well, thank you, Amanda, for kind of explaining that, because I was intrigued by that. I'm like, what is financial abuse? But now I know.
But it's so serious than I would have thought, but it can be really, really, deadly. Now that you shared that story with us.
Yeah. So with financial abuse, and I'm sure this comes with a lot of things you may have seen. How do you deal with like financial setback? How do you deal with that?
Yeah. What's your recommendations on that?
So it depends very much on the circumstances, whether it is financial abuse or we've made a wrong decision in an investment, which, most of us can do. The scammers are out there these days and they're very plausible.
Yes.
I think sitting back and taking stock of, right, where am I actually right now? Do I need to invest in my own financial literacy? Because if the States is anything like Australia, it's not taught at school. Mostly our parents don't teach us anything because they don't know themselves or haven't been taught about money. So understanding our position, and I mean, most people hear the word budget or, sitting down and attacking your finances and either their eyes glaze over or they run away because it's a daunting subject, especially if you don't know much about it. So I think taking stock of where you are, what have you got coming in, what have you got going? And often we can make some cuts in what's going out. We might be subscribed to, too many streaming services. We might not have checked our insurances in some time and be able to get a better deal. Perhaps our utility bills are, with the wrong provider and we could save. So it's a good time to take stock of what can we cut, and even going to the bone in some cases, going, well, I'm not going to have any streaming services because I really need to get on top of this. I'm not going to go out and buy my coffee every day. I'm going to make it at home. I am going to start packing sandwiches for lunch because, if it does cost me $10 or $20 a day to buy coffees and sandwiches and snacks, that's $100 extra I can put back into my budget to get myself back on track. So I think understanding the outgoings first is really important. A lot of people go, well, I can't do my budget because my income's all over the place. I'm in the gig economy or I get commissions and I can never work out what I've got. But knowing when I wake up, it costs me $472.36 per week to breathe, to make ends meet, to keep a roof over my head. Those outgoings are really important. I just call it know your numbers because it leaves you then in a position of control. So if you know what it costs you, then you can go, right, am I actually earning that? If not, you've got two options. You either cut back, you ask for a pay rise, you get a better job, you try and improve yourself, take on a second role, or do both.
Right. Sometimes
you're right.
And talk to someone who you respect, not someone with the flashy house and the flashy cars who's probably up to the eyeballs in debt.
Right.
You slowly and watched who you respect over time and go, how did you get it? I've seen very wealthy people who are, teachers on a middle income wage who've got an investment property and doing very well, and doctors on, 7-figure incomes who have debt up to the eyeballs and very little income because they wanted the lifestyle. So it's what you do with the money more than what you make that makes such a difference.
Yeah. So I'll let you touch on this part because we're going to have to come back to what you said. But over here in the US, we have the term layoff. Do you all have that term in Australia?
Yeah,
For jobs.
unemployment. Yes, yes.
Unemployment.
Okay, so it's basically the same thing. So like what
Made
would you
redundant.
right, yeah. So like listeners, like today, a lot of us don't know what is going on behind the scenes in our jobs and in our company. What recommendations can you give to people to prepare themselves for a possible layoff or loss of income or reduction in force? How can they prepare themselves for something like that?
I think having money in the bank to be able to know that I've got 3 months worth of my expense or 6 months worth of my expenses behind, so that you've got that buffer period that, you know, if the layoff happens, okay, I've got 3 months to find a new job before I have to start panicking. I know many in the States and other countries live paycheck to paycheck, and that makes it very difficult to build up those resources. So it isn't possible for everybody, but where you are in a position to be able to build that up and have that money, it's not for a holiday, it's not to blow on, you know, it's that exactly the reason for having an emergency fund, that if the layoff happens, you do have the money to cover your expenses for a set amount of time, which gives you breathing space to find.
Wonderful. So really the buffer between unemployment or a layoff is to have that emergency fund and don't use it for things that are not an emergency.
Exactly.
Okay, so
That's the key.
Right. So that's very important because we have a lot of young listeners, and you know, they kind of live like for today, and they don't really think that you can go to work tomorrow, and they're like, okay, we don't need you anymore.
Right.
And then, you know, you end up on your family's sofa, or you might end up sleeping in a car. But if you have an emergency fund, at least that'll put something between you and losing your job.
I think that, and that's the key to anything, that emergency fund, because if you don't have that, you're living on the edge.
And so that's important. But yeah, we got to go back to what she talked about.
Yes. So Amanda, this is going to carry out into this question here. Good money management versus what you earn. So what is good money management? And then why is that important versus what you earn?
I think we live in a society today that's very much, I want it now and I can have it now. I can buy it now, pay it off later. I can, you know, it's consumerism wherever we look. You know, we've got people who are set up as role models, and I'm going to throw the Kardashians out there because everyone's heard of them.
You know about the Kardashians? You know about them?
They're everywhere. They're everywhere. It's a society of I want and I can have it. And I mean, most people go, well, if they get it, I want to wear their makeup. I want to wear the clothes they're doing. I want, you know, I saw this in Kim's house on the show. I want that. So not realizing that the level of income and lifestyle that they have is very different to someone who's on a minimum or very low wage. So it's this, we used to call it keeping up with the Joneses. Now it's keeping up with the Kardashians. So it's living beyond our means. So the old, if I can't afford it, I can't have it. So, you know, if you're living this highlights reel Instagram life that you want everyone to think you're so fabulous, it's the people who live within their means who end up getting it. So if you don't have the cash for it, if you don't have, I mean, it's boring and basic, but if you live within your means is the key.
And it's so hard for people to live within their means. And I'm not sure if it's because of social media now, or if it's because they feel like they need to make other people think they have it going on when actually they are not sleeping at night because they have so much consumer debt. But you're so right.
Well, and then Amanda said it, you know, you got social media, like you got Instagram, you know, you got Facebook, you got all these social media platforms, and you see these people flashing stuff, you know, they might be flashing nice clothes or flashing their home or whatever, flashing a car or whatever it may be. And you think, man, I want that.
Yeah, but Amanda, you said it, they're probably broke.
Probably.
Right. You're trying to impress people who they really don't care. Because, you know, a lot of times people have so much going on in their own lives. They might say, oh, you got a nice car. Oh, you got a nice house. But they have so much going on. It's not like they're going to care for more than about 30 seconds. No. Yeah, because we got so many of our own problems.
Yes.
Everybody does. We've all got our stuff.
Everyone's
got stuff. But I think that consumerism society, and I think the amount of young people who buy into that I need to look good, I need to have this. And I mean, sometimes you look at, you know, your buy now, pay later statements, and you're like, I don't even remember what I bought. And, you know, we're talking in the last 2 months, and it could have been the flashy new jacket. It could have been, you know, dinner set that somebody wanted, or the shoes that you couldn't live without, or the handbag. But by the time they keep coming in and you've been paying it off over 2 or 3 months, like, what was that again? And okay, I got my one Instagram shot with it and got a few likes. Does it really matter? Is it going to go in the charity bin within the year?
Right. And it probably will.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think seeing through it and understanding it for what it is, it's a marketing machine, causing people to want to buy more and more and not live within their means.
I like that word.
Yeah, I like that word.
I got to write that one down.
Marketing machine. I like that.
That's what it is, Amanda. I've never heard that term for social media.
Marketing
but that
machine.
is what it is you scroll and you scroll, learn more, buy this, use this. And then when they start tracking you, it's like they automatically know what they can put on your scroll to make up.
Yep, absolutely. You look at all the beautiful stuff on Pinterest. Now it's like, oh, click this little button and you can see exactly where you can buy that and for how much. I want that in my home. Click a button there. It's delivered in 2 days. And I don't remember in 2 months what I bought.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm like, it's so amazing that you're in Australia and we're in the US, but we still have the same issues when it comes to money. Right. And social media. I'm pretty fascinated about that too, because with Australia, it seems like it'll be a little bit more reserved, a little bit more peaceful, a little bit more job stability. But it's like you say, it's a global issue.
It's global. You wouldn't think so, but
but it is. And since you are our financial expert, can you tell me if there is a difference between a financial advisor and a financial planner?
In Australia, the terms are used interchangeably.
Okay.
Some people do view that an advisor will just give you strategic advice. They might say you should put this much of your portfolio into an equity fund, this much of your portfolio into a fixed income fund, where a planner might sit down and go, right, you need the Vanguard fund, you need the BlackRock fund. So some people take it between the high-level strategy advice versus the product advice. But for the most part here, they are used as an interchangeable name.
Wonderful. And so it's probably the same way here. But since you explained it, I wanted to make sure the audience understood. So that makes sense. The advisor is basically going to advise you, and the planner is going to basically sit down with you and help you plan it out step by step.
So with that, Amanda, what are some questions, if I was looking for an advisor or a planner, what are some of the questions that I would need to ask to obtain like a good planner or a good advisor?
I think understanding what you want from the relationship is the first step. When some people approach an advisor, they're not really sure what they need. So if the advisor is someone who sells index funds, you're going to get index funds. If you're wanting to go saying, look, I'd like to protect my family, I need some insurance products, I want to invest for my future, I want to build up my retirement savings and 401, you might need someone who's a lot more holistic who can help. So finding someone that meets your goals is important. Do you care if they're tied to a product agency like a Vanguard or a BlackRock, or do you wanting an independent person who can recommend a multitude of products to you from different folios or fund managers? So I think understanding what you want from the relationship first, and then recommendations from people like you. Do you have friends who have planners that you can see that the difference it's made in their lives? Reading testimonials now is so easy. We've got Google online services. So looking for testimonials for different advisors online and someone who is aligned with what you want. Really important. So like I said, if you're a mismatch right from the start where they're just going to push their agenda onto you and that's not your goals, isn't going to work from the start.
Yeah, so now this is the scary part. What about people who are just like terrified if they turn their trust over to a financial planner or an advisor and they steal their money?
Hopefully in the States, you've got the Financial Planning Association over there. You should have a reputable list of advisors who have to live by a code of ethics if they are a member of that style of organization. They also usually have to be licensed or registered and have professional indemnity insurance so that if things go wrong, you have a line of recourse back to that person. So understanding the licensing and the insurances behind the advisors, does an organization, stand behind their advisors if things go wrong? I'm not talking about a product falls over because, it was invested in dodgy things like we saw back in the Great Recession. But the advisor themselves should be, within an organization that is aligned to a code of ethics that they have to uphold.
Okay, so that's good because see, a lot of the younger listeners may not know that information because a lot of people are afraid to trust someone with their money because they're afraid that they'll go and check it and it's stolen. But it's good to know about all of the insurance and make sure that the company backs their advisors. So hopefully we have a listener that's afraid to invest with someone. Hopefully the information that you provided will at least make them say, well, okay, let me go check this out and see if it's safe. Because if you really want to build your future, you really have to invest your money in something.
Yeah, you do.
What are your thoughts on that? Because it's not really going to grow in a savings account. You have to take some risk.
No, and look, again, because we're living in the internet age, there's so much information available. So someone like a Vanguard, one of the biggest institutions in the world, does have very basic information on their website about, do you want to learn about fixed income? Do you want to know what a bond is? So there's ways you can educate yourself so that sometimes people feel silly, like I don't want to sound like I'm stupid, or I don't want to ask the wrong questions and look like we call minister a dill. So, there's also an embarrassment or shame that I don't want to appear silly in front of a professional. But most people haven't been taught financial literacy. So I view there's no question like a wrong question. So if an advisor starts shaming you, they're the wrong advisor. Every should be okay and valid. And interview advisors. Don't go to the first one you hear about or one with a good review. Interview half a dozen if you have to. Who are you comfortable with? Do they look after their own families? Would you put your mother in this fund? Do you like your mother?
That would be a good question. Do you like her?
Maybe do you like your mother first, and then would you put her in the fund? So,
right.
Find someone who's comfortable, their values align with yours. It doesn't have to be the first person because it is a really big trust relationship. I mean, usually you date to find someone you want to spend the rest of your life with. You don't marry the first person usually.
Right.
Usually a bit of time where they'll get to know. So it's the same. It's this dance between what are your values, what are my values? Do you have a cookie cutter approach where everyone goes into the same things? Why do you do that? Why do you think that works? Do you tailor it to my personal circumstances? What's your approach as an advisor, and how will that suit me? So, look, sometimes you might have to pay for an interview. Sometimes the first interview is free. So it just depends. Do your due diligence and see, we often ignore that gut feel.
Yes.
We just go, there's something not quite, or he's a bit too slick for me, or, there's those feelings we get. Just listen to them.
Oh, see, that gave me goosebumps too.
But it's smart.
Because when you overlook your feeling, your gut feeling, you usually have to pay for it later, and you just want to kick yourself, but then it's too late.
Yeah, and it's usually our own fault because we knew and we pushed it down or ignored it. Or
that's okay.
Yeah, and we kept going with it.
Kept going, yeah. Yeah, sure enough. So you know what, Amanda? This is an interesting question for me. So I learned sometime this week about like retirement. Some people have different words for retirement. So what is your word that you like for retirement? Because I heard retirement, I heard transition, I heard
refire. I'm like,
I done heard so many words that people use for retirement. What do you like to use?
Mostly retirement.
There you go.
I think it does mean different things to different people now, and it's not usually at 65 you hang up the boots, you get the gold watch and play lawn bowls for the rest of your life. Well, if we're going to live for another 30 years in retirement, that looks a whole lot different to our parents passing in 5 or 10 years after they retire. So what does 30 years without an income look like? You know what? If I'm going to live to 95, do I want to hang up the boots at 65? Do I want to continue working till I'm 70 if I'm fit and able, and then take on a part-time role? Do I need to feel busy and productive and like I'm giving back to society? Do I want to involve in charity work or, giving back or spending more time with the grandbaby? So retirement is a very different prospect now for different people, depending on what we think. It can be dependent on our health. Many people are forced to retire early because they're unwell. So it's, what does retirement look like? Am I likely to be unwell and having, terrible medical the rest of my life, versus I've always wanted to go to Australia and that's my bucket list trip. And I'm finally going to do it.
That's right.
So there's a lot to consider.
Well, what are some of your recommendations to the audience on how to go about building wealth for retirement? If you was recommending, what would that be?
Learning what's available in the area where you live. So America, the main form of retirement vehicle is the 401k. So, is that the most attractive tax strategy to put your money in? Do you want to do that plus have money outside of the 401k locked up so that you have access to it for emergency if you need it? Do you want an investment property? Is it really important to you that you have real estate rather than just money in a 401? So some people love a concentrated asset. I know this, I understand it. I'm only going to buy property for the rest of my life because I get it. Others are like, well, I want to build up my 401k because I know about the taxes and I want to have IRA accounts, or I want, bond investments because I want to diversify. And I know if the share market goes down, that one will be okay. So understanding what's available and making those decisions, whether you get a professional to help you or you go, you know what, I've invested enough in this, I really get it, and I want to go my own way. So I think we call it horses for courses.
Right.
There's different ways of going, and usually the diversification is, what financial planners are taught right from the start, that you do spread the risk. So that's, sounds like the best idea for you when markets go up, down, or sideways, which they will. They always will. They've always done that. Every 7 to 10 years we get a great big dip and everybody freaks out. And if you go, you know what, that's going to happen again. What I'd like to do is build up money in a cash account or a savings account outside, and then I'm going to take advantage of that when the next down market happens and put money in the share market.
So
he likes that.
So now I got another question that's tied to that. So you, like the market, you say go up and down. So in a down market, and I think I just heard what you said. So could you please kind of share with the audience, would you hold in a down market or would you sell in a down market? What would you do in a down market if that was the case?
More money in.
Thank you. So audience, listeners, financial expert says when the market goes down, do not panic. Buy. Yeah, because
it will go
it's
up
gonna
again.
go up. Yes. So hopefully.
And usually it goes really quickly. So if you try, it's a gruddy expression, but we say bottom pickers get smelly fingers.
That's a true saying, but it is true. Stinky fingers.
So if you try and pick the bottom, none of us have the crystal ball. So putting money in slowly and over time, we might not be able to pick the bottom, but if we call it dollar cost averaging, you put in a little bit here and a little bit there, and it might keep going down, and you put in a little bit more and a little bit more, and then it starts going up and you put in a little, just depending on how much you have. But trying to pick the bottom and throw all your savings into it at that time, that can freak you out for starters. But if you feed bits of money into it as it's going down and going up, you're going to get the best of, okay, you might have lost that bottom 10% or you missed out because it went up 10%, but putting that money in during a down market, when it turns quickly.
Right. And it'll make you really happy if you do that and just.
I think it's that Warren Buffett quote, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful.
Yes, I've seen that quote. That's exactly what he says.
Yes.
We just have to abide by it and listen.
Yes.
Because
it's very difficult to be brave when the world, the media is going, the world's falling apart, the Dow's down, the Nasdaq's down, the world's imploding, people are jumping out of buildings. It's, to go, right, well, it's time to invest, obviously. So it's a difficult mental leap to make, but worth it for those who can. Look, timing the market is such a difficult thing, but time in the market over the long term.
Say that one more again.
That was beautiful. Can you say that one more time?
Timing the market can be a very difficult thing, but time in the market can pay off over long term.
See, you give me goosebumps again. That was so powerful. I hope that there is someone listening that they heard what you said. That is a valuable statement that can change lives for millions of people. Because
I'd love to say it's mine, but it's not. It's just very, very sound advice.
It sounds good. I'm glad you used it. How about that?
Yes.
And then what are your thoughts on debt?
Yes.
I suppose very much aligned to the Robert Kiyosaki Rich Dad, Poor Dad concept of debt that allows you to grow income producing assets is good debt. And I know he doesn't put the house sometimes in that, but the family home, bricks and mortar, is still a valuable asset and the biggest asset for many, many people. Look, putting it into a flashy car that the minute you drive it off the lot, it halves in value, not such a great investment. So debt it's just a tool. and it's how we use it that, is going to impact the outcome. So, do we really need the super flashy car to get the income, the Instagram post? Or if we get one that's a year or two old, doesn't have many miles on the odometer, and, we can get it a lot cheaper than we would if we drove it off the lot, is that a better investment and use of debt because the debt will be a lot lower? Probably.
I like that, because a lot of the young generation, I don't even know if they understand the difference between the good debt, the bad debt. They'll just debt up everything. It don't matter.
Yeah, look, debt to buy a great shirt or a pair of shoes makes no sense. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. Nobody should be going into debt for the shirt on their back. Often we'll need to, because a vehicle is more than, we've got in a saved. But the debt that's going to return investment, make us money, like for real estate or share portfolios or income funds, that's the debt that's going to make a difference over the long term if we invest.
Okay, I like that.
Yes, I do too, because another thing you said that I was thinking about when you said this was about the clothes on your back, because now you can go online and you can make payments on like shirts and shoes and pants, monthly payments on that stuff. So it's like, what? So that was kind of, you're right. You can be in debt on the clothes on your back. So, Amanda, with your book that you've written, tell me, what is the biggest thing that you learned when you was writing your book, that you can share with the audience?
Sure. So the book's a collection of stories that I ask people that they learned about money over their lives. So there's 18 different people from around the world. Some are financial advisors. Some are people who've started, cross international countries, big businesses. Others are surviving on Social Security. So it was a similar set of questions to each person about what's the best advice you've ever been given about money? Have you had a setback and how did you overcome that? What would you like to pass on to your children about money? Most hadn't thought about. So a series of people's money stories and the very different ideas between them. So a financial advisor in the UK said his son broke his iPad and he's like, Dad, I need a new iPad. So David wanted to teach his son that you don't just go out and buy a new iPad. That costs Dad so many hours at work or a business deal. There's a value to the asset that has to be earned to be able to replace it. Whereas another woman, Tina from Australia, very entrepreneurial, serial starting businesses and selling them, growing, and she wanted her children to never learn that time and money are related. It's the asset that you build that has the value. So for most people, the time is money makes a whole lot of sense. If you go and swap your labor to an employer and get paid, that's how it works. Whereas an entrepreneurial mindset is, no, I'm going to build an asset that has a fabulous value. And okay, I put my time into it, but I don't have an hourly rate based on that time. So two incredibly diametrically opposed ideas, but both with incredible value. So young Harvey had to learn, I'm not just going to get a new iPad because I broke it and hit Dad up for the new product, but the other children going, well, there is an opportunity where I don't have to trade. Mum's shown me that businesses have value, that building an asset has a value. So I loved that, there's these different ideas out there that work for different people. And plenty of us will spend all our lives trading time. That is how it works for the most part. But is there a side hustle or a gig we can do? We're living in, this side hustle economy now where a hobby can become, a replacement for that 9 to 5, getting on the hamster. So, I loved learning that. The other thing that was really big impact was the lady who had the financial abuse story, because that took me down the rabbit hole of finding out more about that, putting together a course for financial advisors around the world to understand the red flags and how they can help. And that's distributed now through a group in the UK. So writing the book for me was such a turning point of learnings. And again, it is just a very simple collection of stories, but some of them were very powerful.
Okay.
Wow.
That is wonderful. And then before we let you go, I also see that you are a very giving person, that you've traveled and did like missionary work. So in closing, can you share with the audience the joy that you receive by going out and doing these charitable trips that you do?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to come across the Hunger Project when I was in a group called Business Chicks in Australia, which is for women in business. And they would do these leadership programs with the Hunger Project. And I was fortunate enough to go to Uganda and Malawi and India to see how they train mostly women into leadership positions to help communities escape poverty And I loved the idea of a hand up, not a handout, and seeing
Oh.
these people, learn how to overcome poverty themselves, not just sitting there waiting for an aid agency to turn up and go, here's money, here's rice, here's a bag of flour, but be able to turn their lives around, which is a much harder process and involves huge mindset shift of, we've always lived in poverty. It'll always be this way. The government's corrupt. We're never going to get out of this cycle. It's intergenerational and, this is just how it is. And we have to be forced to go, you know what, these people are offering me tools. I think I'm going to go down that path, because not everybody does. It's a big deal to change your whole brain and thinking. So for me, getting those mindset lessons was so much more valuable, and learning from people who were so proud that they'd turned their lives around, that, they now have these little farms. They can, gift a pig to somebody else in the community to grow their farm, or chickens, or, instead of doing standard agriculture procedures, learning about how to get more from their crops and still be sustainable on the land. Beautiful stories of how to get ahead in such small ways. And, if giving someone $50 for a microfinance loan can turn communities and families around, how cool is that?
That is so, Amanda, that is so cool. I was just so impressed about you and the Hunger Project, and like, just to lead off of that, how important a lot of people are so consumed with getting wealth, building wealth. How important is it to also have that aspect of giving back, or being a giver?
I believe in the philosophy of giver's gain, and it's not that you get physically back from giving, it's the joy,
right?
That biblical,
Yes.
good to give than receive, and the joy that it's brought me. And I suppose it's as little as giving someone the gift of your time. It doesn't have to be, I've got a spare $3,000 to give to this charity and blog about it. You know what, my old nanny's sitting in a home all on her, what gift would she like? Probably an hour of your time. What a beautiful gift for her. So it doesn't have to be monetary. It could be, there's a tree planting somewhere and I'm going to go and help out with that, or the charity shop down the road needs someone to sort some new t-shirts or donations that have come in. Charity and philanthropy doesn't have to be about putting your hand in your pocket, because time is one of the biggest gifts that we have.
Well, that's true.
Yes.
That got me. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Brought you to tears. I'm so sorry.
But it is true.
Yes.
Time. Some people just need our time.
Yes.
It's okay to give money, but sometimes time is better than money.
And even it can just be looking to do that random act of kindness. You're on the subway or you go somewhere and someone's got a loud Larry outfit that you'd never wear, and you just get past them and go, you look spectacular today.
Right.
Maybe that's all they needed to make their day. I mean, sometimes when you're down and someone has said something beautiful, it put the spring in your step. It brought the smile and the twinkle back to your face.
Right.
It's that's charitable as well. I mean, apart from you feeling like I've just made that person's day, you probably did.
Yeah, probably.
Looking to do those random acts of kindness, and it has that ripple effect. We don't know where that goes. Maybe they were off to do something terrible that day, or it turned things around for them. We don't know.
Yes.
Well, I thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
and
thank you,
want to
Amanda.
add anything to Miss Amanda? Oh, that touched my heart.
She already said it all right there with the giving, because we believe in giving as well. So that's why I think that was so important. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and so with you don't just talk about it. You've actually done it. You've gone places that a lot of people would not go, because it's scary to go places like that. Like, are you going to make it out alive? But you did it, and you went and you made a difference.
And
so
I'm the richer for doing it.
Right.
Yes.
Right. You are. So thank you so much for being our guest. This was truly an honor to have you and to see things from your perspective. And I'm hoping that someone at least will be able to recognize signs if they're being taken advantage of financially.
And I think reach out to a trusted person is that first step to go, look, does this sound right to you? Am I imagining it? Because sometimes you feel like you're going crazy. So just try and talk to a trusted friend first to see what you're up to.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Amanda. This has been great.
Okay, well, all right, Miss Amanda. We want to thank you again for joining the Money Talk, and you enjoy your beautiful day in Australia.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
Thank you.
Amanda.
All righty. See you next time. Okay, bye-bye. I sure hope you enjoyed our guest, Miss Amanda from Australia. Our big talking point today was financial abuse. If you suspect that you are under financial abuse, please reach out to a friend, a family member, or a counselor. This is no joking matter. It's very serious, and you may not even realize that you are under or being treated in a financially abusive way. So if you are, we highly encourage you to reach out for help today. And some of the things that ideas that she said is, if your partner is controlling like your credit card, they're doing shopping and you can't shop, they're watching every penny that you spend, if you just start to feel like things are getting weird, they have a movement now that's called Say Something. So I'm pleading with you to say something. We talk about money. That's what we do. We talk about money all the time. We're here. If you need help, reach out again to a family friend, counselor, someone that you can trust if you feel like you're in a financially abusive relationship. And again, I'll say thank you so much for watching the Money Talk.
Thank you very much. And please, if you like the content, please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll be bringing you new content every Thursday. So again, from the Money Talk, we appreciate your time. And until next time,
we'll see you next Thursday.
Yes.
Bye-bye.